Hello and welcome back to the channel for another video. Once again, Happy New Year, and we are now in 2024 preparing for the 2024 SATs tests. In this video, I'm going to do a breakdown of the arithmetic paper to really help you and your child prepare for this particular test. So, a bit of information about this. It's one of three papers that the children will do. It's paper 1. It's got 40 marks and it lasts for 30 minutes. So it's a test that the children don't have very long to do and have to work quickly and carefully through it. Let's have a quick think about the maths tests for the last few years and how they've looked. So here you can see the years at the top here, 17, 18, 19, 22, 23, no tests in 21 or 20 because of COVID. But you can see how the marks have been distributed. Notice how a significant number of marks for the last 2 years have been allocated to calculations and fractions, decimals, and percentages. Also, there's a few questions on number and place value as well. So what this tells us, if we can prepare our children to make sure they know how to answer calculations correctly, they know how to do fractions, decimals, percentages, and they're secure with their number and place value, it stands them in a really good stead in passing their maths SATs. With the other areas, very little questions are allocated to those. The children still need to know about these areas and understand them, but it's really important they have a good understanding of these three key areas. So specifically the arithmetic paper then, the arithmetic paper it's a key stage 2 test, first of all, which means they're assessed on learning they've done from years 3 to 6. And here you can see the percentage of questions that have come from each year group. So in the 2023 paper, last year's paper, 11% of the content was from the year 3 curriculum, 25% of the content was from the year 4 curriculum, 22% was from year 5, and 42% was from year 6. So it's not just a year 6 test, they're also assessed on things they will have covered and learnt in those other 3 year groups. And the arithmetic paper specifically is broken down into 4 key areas really: number and place value, calculation, fractions, decimals and percentages, ratio and proportion. And here you can see for the last 3 years how the questions have been allocated. So for the arithmetic paper, there is a significant number of questions allocated for calculation. In fact, the most, with 18 questions on the 2022 paper and 2023 paper. 14 questions were fractions and decimals. Only 1 question was number and place value, and 3 questions were ratio and proportion. Just something to bear in mind though, with regards to place value, if they don't have a secure understanding of place value up to 5 and 6 digit numbers, then they will struggle to answer the other questions. So even though there's only 1 question on number and place value, it kind of underpins the rest of the questions as well. But once again, when preparing for this test, we need to make sure the children are really secure in their calculation, really secure in their fractions and decimals understanding, and that will stand them in good stead when passing and attempting this test. So let's go through each one of those strands and have a look at the different types of questions that your children will be expected to answer. Starting with the number and place value strand, and as I said before, there was only 1 question on this. Here you can see a breakdown of what number and place value actually looks like. So you've got negative numbers, number problems, rounding, estimating, place value, Roman numerals, read, write, order and compare numbers, and counting and multiples. So these are all the kinds of different strands that come under a number and place value. But in the arithmetic test, there was only 1 question, and it was the question number 1. Also, something to look at is this type of question, which has a 3-digit number, is from the year 3 curriculum. So this is a year 3 curriculum question, and it was 707 take away 10. So for this question, I would give the children a number of different options, but they could count back from 707, and that would be something they could do in their head. And if you do 707 and you take away 10, you're going to get 697. And why this question might be a little bit tricky is because they have to cross the hundreds barrier here, going from 700 to 600, but that's all it is. They're subtracting 10 from any given number, and if they can do that, then that's something you need to be able to do in this test. So 697 was the answer to that question on number and place value. So that was the only question on number and place value, but as I said before, all the other questions are kind of underpinned by place value. So the next strand was calculation, and this is the most significant of all the strands. There were 18 questions on the arithmetic paper which involved the children solving some kind of calculation. And these would be your 4 operations. So things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and knowing all the written methods in order to solve these. But you also had things like the inverse. You have factors, primes, squares, and cubes. You'll have BIDMAS in there. You have solving problems, so long division, long multiplication, order of operations. So there's a significant amount there, but essentially it's solving those calculations for the 4 operations. So let's have a look at what these questions look like on the 2023 paper. So one of the questions was number 4, and it looked like this, 8,005 plus 408. Now, what they try to do is try to confuse the children here by putting the equal sign in the middle. But I always say to children, look at this like a balancing scale. So whatever is on this side has to balance out with whatever's on this side. So all we're really doing is adding these two numbers together, and you can do that using the column method, which the children should be able to use. So 8,005 plus 408. So we just solve it using column method. 5 add 8 is 13, so 3 down, carry the 1. 0 and 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 0 and 4 is 4, and 8 and 0 is 8. So we're giving us a final answer of 8,413, and the children must remember to write their answer in the box. Okay, so that was one of the calculation questions. So these questions where the equal sign is in the middle, to try and confuse the children, but really they just need to add this and balance it out. So whatever's on this side must equal this side. Number 3 was another calculation question, and here we have a multiplication question. Again, 3-digit number, so we know that it's come from the Year 3 curriculum. So we're going to set this out as a multiplication sort of column method question. So 702 times 4. Okay. And we start by multiplying the ones. So 2 4s are 8. Oops. 0 times 4 is 0. And 7 4s are 28. Giving us a final answer of 2,808, and we can write our answer in the box. So that was a multiplication question from the calculation question strand. Let's have a look at another one. This one is 450 divided by 9, so it's a division question, but this is actually testing the children's understanding of their known facts. So what do we know about 45 and 9? Well, if I do 45 divided by 9, that's a division fact. It's the 5 and 9 times table. So 45 divided by 9 is 5. But as you can see, it's not 45, it's 450. So it's going to be 450 divided by 9 will be an extra 0 here, won't it? Okay, so we've got an extra 0 here, giving us a final answer of 50. So yes, they could use short division to solve this, but a quicker and more efficient way would be to use their known facts. If I know 45 divided by 9 is 5, then I know that 450 divided by 9 is going to be 50. Okay, another missing number box one here, but this time we have subtraction. So they did a lot of questions like this on the 2023 paper where they just moved the answer box to the front. And it's just making sure the children can do these sums in any order. Okay, but what I would say is, again, that this equal sign is like a balancing scale. Whatever is on this side must balance to this side. So all I really need to do is 8,217 take away 5,463 using column method, remembering to borrow. So 7 take away 3 is 4. 1 take away 6 I can't do 2 take away 4, so I borrow from the 8, that becomes 7, that becomes 12, which I cross out and borrow from becomes 11, and that becomes 11. So 11 take away 6 is 5, 11 take away 4 is 7. And 7 take away 5 is 2. Leaving us with a final answer of 2,754. Once again, it's a subtraction question, so it's a calculation question, but they've just put the box at the front. But this is like a balancing scale, so whatever this equals must equal this. Okay, so 2,754 was the final answer for that one. Number 15, we've got a division question, and for this one, I would encourage the children to use short division or the bus stop method. So 747, the big number goes underneath the bus stop, and the smaller number goes on the outside. So how many 9s in 7 I can't do? How many 9s in 74? Well, 9 times 8 is 72. Okay, so does it go into 9 times 9, 81, too big? So 9 times 8 is 72, so I'm going to put an 8 there. It goes into 8 times the remainder of 2, so the 2 goes there. And it's 9 into 27, that's fairly straightforward. 9 into 27 goes 3 times. So giving us a final answer of 83. Okay, number 20. This was another calculation question. It's 2 marks. So these questions are worth 2 marks because they're long multiplication. There's quite a lot to do. And even if the children get the answer wrong, they can still get a mark for their working out. So I would encourage them to show their working, not just try and do it in their head. So let's go through this type of question. Multiplying with the ones first, then 8 times 4 is 32. 2 down, carry the 3. 0 times 4 is 0, but the 3's there, so we put the 3 down. 5 4s are 20. Now, one thing that children always forget to do, and must remember when multiplying the 10s, is to put a 0 to placehold. So I put a 0 in the ones column first. 8 times 7 is 56. 6 down, carry the 5. Then we've got 0 times 7 is 0, but we've got the 5 there. Then we've got 5 times 7, which is 35. Now, the next step is to add those two parts together. Okay, so we add downwards. 2 add 0 is 2. 3 and 6 is 9. 0 and 5 is 5. 2 and 5 is 7. And then 3 add 0 is 3. Giving us a final answer of 37,592. Writing our answer in the box when we've done the question. So these are types of questions that will come up on the arithmetic paper. A long multiplication question. Your children will need to know how to solve these. And another type of question, again worth 2 marks, is long division. And this is one that the children really struggle with, but they just need to know the order and process. The first step for solving these kinds of questions is for children to write down some jottings. You can see I've done it on the side here. So we know that we're trying to work out how many times 26 goes into this number, 4,472. So I actually need to know what the 26 times table is. So what I've done is I've written down the 26 times table here, and your children will need to do that in the test. I don't know, children are not expected to know the 26 times table, so it's about working out which one of these what this is. So you can double 26 for 52. You can do 26 times 3, so you do other jottings like this just on the side to help you find these numbers. 6 3s are 18, 8 down, carry the 1. 2 3s are 6 and 1 is 7. So that's how I can get 78. And you do the same until you get about 6. 6 or 7 is usually enough. And I'll show you why this helps as you go along. So that's 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and 6 times. So straight away we can see how many times does 26 go into 4? It doesn't. So I put a 0 here. So then I'm looking how many times does 26 go into 44? And I can see that it goes in once. It doesn't go in twice. That's too big. So I'm going to put the 1 here, and I put the 26 underneath the 44, and then I take away. So 4 take away 6 I can't do, so I'm going to borrow. That becomes 3. That becomes 14. 14 take away 6 is 8, and 3 take away 2 is 1. Now, the next step is to bring the next number down. So I bring the 7 down. So how many times does 26 go into 187? Well, 156, it could, but does it go in another time? So let's do 26 times 7 and see what we get. So if I do 7 times, I've got 26 times 7. So here I've done 6 times 7 is 42. Okay, so 2 down and carry the 4. 2 7s are 14, plus 4 is 18, giving us 182. So 182. So if I do this, subtract down again, 7 take away 2 is 5. 8 take away 0 is 0, and 1 take away 1 is 0. So then I bring the 2 down, so that's 52. Now that's the final number I have to look. So how many times does 26 go into 52? And it goes in twice. And I put that up here. And if I do 52 take away 52, obviously it leaves me with 0. And what's really nice about the long division questions is usually they work out with no remainders. Usually the answer is a whole number. Not always, but normally the answer is a whole number. So our final answer is 172. Okay. So moving on to fractions, decimals, and percentages. There were 14 questions on this. So again, quite a big strand for the children to know. And here you can see the breakdown of what those questions might have looked like. So we've got add and subtract fractions. We've got adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying decimals, ordering decimals. We've got solving problems with percentages potentially, and equivalent fractions. So there's quite a lot for the children to know. But let's have a look at what these questions look like. So question 21 was a fractions decimal question. 1/8 divided by 3. Now, with this question, a really quick and easy method is to look at the numerator first. Can you divide 3 with the numerator? So 1 divided by 3. Now, if I can't do a whole number here, the integer divided by the numerator, then what I say to the children is just multiply the denominator. So here we've got 1 does not go into 3, so I'm going to do 3 times 8. I'm going to multiply these two together, which gives me 24, and we keep the numerator the same. So our final answer for this one would be 1/24. And it's the same with any of these kinds of questions. They can look tricky to start with, but when you really, when you know a method that makes it easier and it's quick for the children. So if you can't divide the numerator by 3, then just multiply the denominator by 3, or the whole number here. Keep the numerator the same and write your answer underneath. So 1/24 was the answer for that one. Number 22, we have adding fractions. We've also got a whole number here as well. So the best thing to do is look at the whole number. The whole number, if we were doing it with sevenths, would be 7 sevenths. So then I'm just adding 7 sevenths to 2 sevenths to 5 sevenths. And it's going to be an improper fraction. So here we've got 7, add 2 is 9, 9 and 5 is 14. So that's 14 sevenths, but you might also notice that 7 goes into 14 twice. So you could have 14 sevenths, or that would also be 2 wholes, wouldn't it? Yeah, because 7 goes into 14 twice. So 14 sevenths would be correct, but also 2 wholes is correct as well. Question 24, we've got multiplying a decimal number here. Now, what I would suggest the children to do here is to take out the decimal point, multiply the numbers, and then put it back in. So here, one way you can do that is to do 3.2. How do you get that to be a whole number? Well, you can times it by 10, and that will make it 32. But if we've multiplied that by 10, we have to make sure that when we get our answer, we then divide that by 10. So let's do 32 times 12. 2 2s are 4. 3 2s are 6. 0 to place hold. 2 to 2. And 1 times 3 is 3. We add those two parts together. 4 add 0 is 4. 6 and 2 is 8. And then 3. But just remembering what I said before, if I've multiplied this number by 10 to get it to be a whole number, I need to divide my answer by 10 at the end. So 384 divided by 10 would be 38.4. And I can write that answer in the box. So just another question the children would need to know how to do for fractions and decimals. Okay, here is another one, and this is multiplying fractions. Now, again, it's one of those questions which looks trickier than it is, but all I do with these, when I've got two fractions that I'm multiplying together, is just multiply the numerators. So 2 times 5, first of all, is 10, and then multiply the denominators. 7 times 9 is 63, and that's it, really. Check to see if I can simplify this fraction anyway, which I don't think I can. So my final answer would be 10 over 63. Okay, another type of question is we've got a fraction multiplied by a whole number. This is just a fraction of amount question. I tell the children that this sign here, times, means of. So what I'm actually trying to work out is 2/3 of 900, and to do divide by the bottom and times by the top. So that's the rule. So I do 900 divided by 3, which is 300. And then I do 300 multiplied by the numerator times 2, times 2, which is 600. So the rule for these is to divide by the bottom and times by the top. Divide by the bottom and times by the top. We've got, if it's a times sign or if it says of here, that's what the rule is. We divide by the bottom and times by the top, giving us that answer of 600. Number 19. So yeah, fraction and decimals. Here we're adding or we're subtracting two decimal numbers. Trickiest thing about these questions is making sure the numbers are lined up correctly. So let's start with our whole number first. So we've got 29 and we've got 16, which is going underneath. Then I say line up the decimal points like buttons on a shirt, one underneath the other. Then let's do the tenths. So we've got 5 here. We've got 1 here. Then we've got nothing and nothing, but then we've got 2 and 5. And what's really important for the children to do is to put zeros in here to place hold, because that will help us when subtracting to remember to borrow. Because I can't do 0 take away 5, I can't do 0 take away 2, so when I borrow from 5, that becomes 4, that becomes 10, which becomes 9, and that becomes 10. 10 take away 5 is 5, 9 take away 2 is 7, 4 take away 1 is 3, decimal point, 9 take away 6 is 3, and 2 take away 1 is 1, giving us a final answer of 13.375. And the children must remember to put in the decimal point when they're writing their answer, otherwise they will not get a mark for that question. But for this one, make sure you have the numbers all lined up in the correct places. Number 18, so we've got adding fractions, but here the denominators are different. So what we need to do is we need to find the lowest common denominator, a number that all three of these go into. Now, looking at those numbers, I can see that 3 and 6 both go into 18. So 18 is going to be our lowest common denominator. I'm going to keep that one the same. But then how do I get from... So the denominator is 18 for all of them. How do I get from 3 to 18? Well, I times by 6. So whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. Okay, so how do I get from there to there? I timed by 6. So then 1 times 6 is 6. Again, with this one, how do I get from 6 to 18? I times by 3. Okay, whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 2 3s are 6. So now I have all these numbers with the same denominator. I can add them together. 6 add 6 is 12. 12 add 5 is 17. giving us a final answer of 17/18. And I must remember to write the number in the box given. Okay, so we're going to move on to ratio and proportion now. And there were only 3 questions for ratio and proportion. And I find this an interesting one because you can see here that the use of percentages is included within ratio and proportion. So for me, the percentage questions are more likely to be fractions, decimal percentages, but they're included within the ratio and proportion strand. But there were 3 questions involving percentages on the paper: 27, 30, and 35. So let me go through a couple of those with you. Now, with percentages, this can be a tricky type of question for children, and there are many different ways to solve them. But I find the quickest and most efficient method is, if we remember that percentages out of 100, the best thing to do is to multiply the 2 numbers together first. So 52 times 700. Okay, so this is what I teach my children to do, it being the quickest and most efficient method. All right, and because they can already do long multiplication, this should help them. So 0 times 2 is 0, 0 times 2 is 0, 7 times 2 is 14. Don't forget 0 to placehold. 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 5 is 0, 7 times 5 is 35. So we need to add those parts together. 0 add 0 is 0, 0 add 0 is 0, 4 add 0 is 4, 1 and 5 is 6, and then 3 and 0 is 3. Giving us a final answer of 336,400. But what we do, the last step is to divide that by 100. And most of the time, why this is easy is because they just have to cross out 2 zeros, giving us a final answer of 364. So for percentage questions, the most efficient method is to times the number together and then divide the answer by 100. Okay, thanks for watching this video. I hope you found that useful. Just to be a reminder then that a lot of the questions on the arithmetic paper will be either calculations or fractions, decimals, and percentages. If you want to watch a full walkthrough of the arithmetic paper from 2023, you'll see it appearing on the video here. So just click on that link there to watch that full walkthrough. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.